let's talk about roofs. Go to page 97. Oh, you did take that. Okay, well, let's start. In your name, Ron?
Ronnie.
Ronnie, so close. Ronnie, how do you know when a roof's working?
If it's not leaking.
Thank you. Stop right there. Don't, let's leave it at that. If it's not leaking, it's operating as designed. And it may be old. I may want to talk about that. Well, let's look at what the state says about it. Page 97, standards of practice. A, home inspectors shall observe and report on readily accessible roofing materials and condition. Michael?
Yes.
Condition of a roof. What's the condition of what's the bad condition on a metal roof?
Kind of metal.
Dented or rusting? Thank
Rusting.
you. You were on top of that one.
Quick.
Yes, I got that. Clay tiles, Michael, other Michael? Clay tiles, what's the deficiency in clay tiles? Huh?
They're broken.
Broken, very good. Is the roof leaking? Not necessarily, you can't call it deficient. I had an attorney call me up one time and says, you can't say to replace the roof. And he wasn't even telling me because we don't do architectural engineer advice. He was telling me, I can't say it needs to replace because it wasn't leaking. And that makes a lot of sense. If it's not leaking, it's a good roof. I don't know an area that makes me, I know when I was there early on in my career, 5 years, 6 years into it, even up to that, every time I go out to the house, I always held my breath about the roof because I wasn't walking on it. And I don't like roofs because there's so many things that can go wrong. They can be deteriorated, they can be confusing in terms of how old they are. But the important thing about roofs, I think, is to determine whether they're leaking or not. Ron, can you tell if a roof is leaking if you're walking on it?
Yeah.
So why are you walking on the roof?
Uh,
What are you supposed to say? I'm not going to.
I'm not going to.
There you go. There's so many things, reasons not to walk on a roof. You're going to destroy the warranty if there is one on it, and you don't know that there's not a warranty on it. You could destroy the roof itself. You could fall off. You could cause additional damage on something. There's no upside to it. The state doesn't require you to walk on roofs. Our association doesn't require us to walk on roofs, and my wife doesn't want me to walk on a roof. So I can think of three very good reasons, one being my wife, three very good reasons not to go around walking on roofs. So what we do is we inspect roofs from the ground. And I'm going to discuss, first thing I'm going to do is by following the checklist. And why don't we look at the checklist? The checklist for the roof is on page 108. First line. I'm sorry,
Bob.
what was your name? Bob? Bob. Mr. Emoting. Mr. Emoting. I should get an emoji. Get an emoji that just sits there like this. Bob, tell me, what's that first line say? On the checklist, roof type. Go ahead.
Flat, dip, cross gable, gable.
Do any of those make any difference? From a roof perspective or what your client needs to know?
Not particularly.
No. Why are we looking for that information?
Maybe different products that are up on the roof.
Possibly. But what we're really doing is just showing that, I've always said that proves I was at a house. Between the defects and the material that we see and the type of house, I think every house has a unique fingerprint. And I'm proving that I was there. I'm providing data points and home inspection reports are interesting because there's no requirement for what a home inspection report does except list the defects. I don't have to have this information in the checklist. But in the process of gathering this information, it guides me as to what to look at next. And that way, if I follow the checklist, section by section by section, line by line by line, what don't I do? Bob,
You missed something.
don't miss something. Try looking at an 1,800 square foot house that has 20-some sections. You got two clients walking around with you, you got a dog barking at you, and you got two realtors that are nasty. Okay? You're gonna miss something unless you follow your routine. And your routine is going to be following this checklist. If I told any of you, and I can't wait for some, and I never had it happen, I dream of the day some contractor walks up to me and says, you fucking home inspectors, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know anything about anything, you just go out there and take people's money. I would challenge him to go do a report, because I would go do an inspection. Because what he doesn't know is how to write a report or to look at it in a systematic manner. He knows about his trade, and I don't know anything, but they tend to look at us as not having a trade and not knowing our trade. And a contractor just can't walk into a house and start systematically looking at it unless he has some kind of report he's following, or unless he's doing it item by item by item. So, although this isn't an important information about the style of the roof, and or the next line, Bob, is what?
Roof coverage.
Asphalt shingle, architectural shingle, wood shake, slate, metal. Again, does it matter? No, doesn't matter to Hillbeans what the material is. But it gives me something to look at. When I say it's a metal roof, what's the one thing I need to do? Look at all the metal roof. So that's a guide as to what to look at next. So I'm going to look at it, and then I'm going to look for a defect. And we define defect as a, we use the acronym SOC. I'm going to look at that roof covering from the perspective of safety. Now, there's only one situation I can think of be unsafe about looking at a roof, and that's if I had a slate roof and I had those loose tiles on the edge, and one of those could rust away, the metal hanger could rust away and bang me on the head and kill me. That's a safety issue. Operation. What's the operation, William? What's the operation of a roof?
Keep the water out.
Keep the water out. So I'm looking at it from a safety perspective, I'm looking at it from an operation, and then condition. Michael, what's the condition of a slate roof? Tell me why, what am I looking at in terms of condition?
That it's all together, that
Right, there's no broken tiles,
broken pieces.
because slate doesn't wear.
Right.
Well, it does
Well,
wear, but at
eventually.
150 years.
Yeah.
Not like an asphalt shingle roof would do it, correct?
Right.
Okay, so at asphalt shingle, I'm looking for the grains, granular stuff all gone. I'm looking for a little, curling, lifting. Okay, those are all defects of an asphalt shingle and also an architectural shingle. But, so, notice that this list here of the checklist took me from roof to roof covering and then approximate age of it. So what am I really doing? I'm looking at the whole roof, and I'm looking for these three things. Now, is it important that is it a gable or not? No. But it focuses my mind and my attention on that item. Okay? So I'm really looking at everything that this tells me to look at, and as I'm gathering data points, I'm looking at it through these three filters. Okay? You look quizzical. No? You're sitting in the right road. Let's go further. William, defects observed? What are they?
Non-curving, particulate release, lifting missing shingles, moss loose.
William, why is it asking me for roof penetrations?
Lead to the next one?
Yes.
Because that's all potential places where you can get leaks.
That's exactly right. They should be properly flashed, etc. So I'm at least going to look at it from the outside. If I have ugly flashing, am I going to write it up as a defect?
Ugly flashing?
Yeah.
No,
Why?
well, because it doesn't matter whether it's ugly or not, as long as it's functioning.
Thank you. So don't walk up to my chimney the next time some home inspector does my house and looks at the flat sheet and says, wow, that's ugly, and starts writing it up. Until you're inside, you don't know whether it's defective or not. Don't make the assumption. Are you a contractor? You look like contractor type. You know, any contractors? None? We have a class with no contractors in it? How does that even happen?
Construction.
Okay, you're gonna have to do our only semi-contractor.
Nothing with buildings.
Okay, well, that's useless. My point is, a lot of contractors look at things like decks, et cetera, and say, wow, that was done wrong. But since we're not offering any engineering or architectural advice, wrong may be his opinion of wrong, but that might not make it structurally wrong. So one of the things that we don't do is we don't judge things because it's not the way you would have done it. I'm sure you're probably handy around the house, correct?
Yeah.
And you fix stuff all the time.
Yes,
And your neighbor walks over and he admires your work.
yes, all the
And
time.
then others walk over and say, you did that wrong. Does that ever happen?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just no.
You also have a shotgun, right?
Or a big Doberman.
We only have people over that we like.
No, oh, okay. Anyway, just because it's not the way you would do it doesn't make it wrong. Okay? Because multiple jobs, I mean, on different jobs around the house, construction, et cetera, there's multiple different ways of doing it. And they may build decks in Louisiana different than they built here because of different reasons. So he came up here and built it his way. Still sturdy, still works, just not the way you would build it. So we don't put our judgment in on it, so be careful of that. So, in other words, my point here is the inspection worksheet is your guide to doing an inspection. And you follow it. And you don't just take data down. This is not an inventory list. It's a list of things to look at. So when you get to the material, you don't just say, oh, that's architectural shingle. You go, oh, that's architectural shingle, and then you spend 2 minutes walking around the building looking at the architectural shingle, looking for lifting tiles, looking for curling tiles, looking for defects that are there. And then you go on to the next line.
Back to getting on a roof, like you wouldn't want to go on a roof and see if like the sealing around the flashing around the pipes and the vents and
Or
stuff.
is what?
Maybe
Ugly?
peeling away, maybe not really causing a problem yet, but potential.
I get a better
problem.
idea, but I don't get the idea. I get a better idea, kind of the age of the roof by being on it. Not that I've ever been on that many roofs. But until I get inside, I don't know whether it's actually failed or not. You're absolutely right. I'm sure that there's a lot more information I can learn by being on a roof than not being on a roof. I'm not arguing that point.
Right, right.
But the important point I'm looking at is I still don't know whether it's leaking or not.
That's it.
That's it.
They just build them so far off the ground, David.
Yeah, they don't do a lower or flatter. Also, there's something that I voice all the time about inspecting roofs that I've never heard anybody echo. And even Joe doesn't echo this. Are you listening now?
I am, sir.
Okay. If I walk on a roof, do I think I've done a more thorough inspection than if I was on the ground?
It's possible.
But what is my contention? I got up on the roof for a reason. It's to look closer.
To look closer.
So my client thinks I did a better job, and you inherently in here think you did a better job, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what about the roof that is too steep a grade? You're not walking on that. So inherently, inside, you don't think you inspected as well as you did that other house. Do you really want to go around half of the year when it's inclement weather and or snow, doing bad inspections on roofs? No, you don't want to do that. You want to give every roof the same exact inspection every time. Since you can't walk on the same roofs, why don't you come up with an inspection that you can do on any roof in any weather?
Right.
And that's by looking in the attic. You make as good an effort as you can by looking in the attic, because now that's where the leaks happen. And I
Yeah,
can
well,
tell you as
access
much
to
about the roof from the attic as I can from walking on it. Now, yeah, I get an idea of what the material is, and I get an idea of its condition, but I can't tell you whether it's functioning or not from on top, and I don't care how good a roof it is, correct?
Yeah.
So why, see, I think I know home inspectors, guys that we train, guys I've known for 10 or 12 years, they're still out there inspecting, they went through my school, and he still walks on roofs today. I just don't think inherently he's giving as good an inspection as he does, because in his mind, he's done his good inspection on a roof by walking on it. But then the next time he isn't able to walk on a roof because of the grade or the snow, he inherently in here doesn't feel like it's quite as good a job. God, I wish I could walk to it. So why not give everything the same exact inspection all the time? Focus on the attic on the roof inspection, not the roof. Yeah, you're looking for the obvious defects, but in the attic, you're looking for operation.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
A lot of sense, yeah.
Okay. For the new guys, standards of practice that you see on page 97, every section we have in this program, every section has its own standards of practice, which defines our job. These are New York State standards of practice. These define what our job is. It doesn't say I have to get a drone and fly it over the roof. It doesn't say I have to walk on the roof. It doesn't say anything about, it doesn't say all those things about a roof, but what it does say about a roof is home inspectors shall observe and report on readily accessible roofing materials and condition, roof drainage systems. What's a drainage system?
Gutters, downspouts.
Exactly. So I have to report on the gutters. And it says flashing. I'm going to report on flashing. Doesn't mean that it's working or not working because I can't tell that. But when I'm in the attic, I can tell that. I'm not doing attic. I'm just not flashing. I'm just not going to judge it by the way it looks. Let me see if it's performing first before I talk about my flashing. And then skylights, chimneys, and roof penetrations. I'm going to note those and inspect those for their condition, etc. Home inspectors shall report on the methods used to observe the roof, so I'm going to do it from the ground. Well, isn't that funny? Because if you turn over to the checklist, back on page 107, 8, roof, it's not on this one? Method? How old is this checklist? Normally we have on the new one that you're going to get on when you on your own reporting system. It's going to say method of observing the roof, and you're going to either say from the ground you walked on it, or you did it from a chimney.
The next page is on the top there.
Roof inspection method.
109 on top, roof worksheet.
Huh? How did that happen, Joe? It's not on page 108, but it's on 109. Huh? Doesn't matter. I never noticed that before. Home inspector shall report on the methods observed on the roof. Well, there it is on the checklist. You're going to say you did it from the ground. All home inspector reports shall describe the observed condition and type of roofing materials and shall describe the methods used to observe the roof. Home inspectors are not required to observe and report on antenna, lighting arresters, flues, chimneys, interior that is not readily accessible, other installed accessories. Home inspectors not required to operate power roof ventilators. Home inspectors not required to determine the remaining life expectancy of roof coverings. Home inspectors not required to walk on or access a roof. Well, what did those SOPs do for us? Told us what we had to report and how to do it. So, would you say that you would be immune from suit if you did exactly what the state said and you were right in every one of those lines?
I don't think anybody's immune from suit.
Yeah, but you could be right. No, you're going to get sued, but that doesn't mean you're going to lose. We get sued all the time. We get up, well, not all the time. I haven't been sued in 10 years, maybe 8 years. But a home inspector does get called out. Joe, you were called out recently on a report. Were you right or was your client right?
It was a little bit of both.
Oops. I'm sorry.
It was a little bit of both in the manner, because I was right, but I can understand their concern.
Okay. We get calls all the time. But that, what was my point? was that point? Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Follow these guidelines, right?
We
Follow
follow,
the
we
guidelines.
follow, oh, I was saying, if you follow the guidelines for what the state says to do, and then you do it correctly, you report on these things, and you don't require walking on roofs, so you don't walk on a roof, and if it's a visible, observable defect, and you're not walking on the roof, it would have been visible on the roof, but it wasn't visible from the ground, they could say you should have seen it from the roof, and your defense is you don't have to walk on roofs. So you're not liable. Doesn't mean you can't be sued, maybe I misspoke, but you're not liable. Okay? If you follow this exactly, you won't get sued. If you stray from your standards of practice, you may get sued successfully. You're gonna wind up in court, and we talk a lot about court in this class, don't we, Michael?
Yes, we do.
And why is that?
Because it's gonna happen. That's-
Well, not only that, we wanna talk about it so you don't walk out of here wondering about it.
Right.
We talk about it so it doesn't happen to you, because you know you're on the right side of doing it. So, as much as we talk about it, you've been inspecting for 5 years now? About 5?
Yep.
How many times have you walked into a small claims court?
0.
How many times have you had a phone call from a client that was a little,
3 times I had to.
in 5 years, 3 times?
I had to talk with the client, and I returned the inspection fee back to them because they weren't satisfied with the
But that's,
inspection.
he didn't.
And that's my business.
That's the way he does it.
I'd rather keep people happy, I mean.
And he doesn't want somebody posting an angry Facebook page
Mhm.
thing about him, so.
But yeah,
You're so worried about what people think of you, Joe.
it's.
In this business,
In
it's
this
very-
business, people post fake stuff, and it's hard to get it off the internet. It's amazing how many inspectors I
So
get.
don't go out there pissing people off.
So,
You're right, you can get sued. Now, I've always looked at suits as anybody can be sued for anything. It's just how much money are they willing to spend?
yeah.
If you're only gonna recover $1,000, are they gonna spend $3,000 to sue you? Probably not, unless you pissed them off, and now it becomes an ego thing, and then he'll spend $3,000. So the first rule of thumb to stay out of court is don't piss anybody off. And then you'll be able to calmly negotiate with them and have your own contractor go out there and fix it. You don't have to wind up in court. That's well worth a couple grand right there, just to calm him down. Okay? But, and it's not an issue. I don't want you thinking that we're getting sued all the time. But in this class, I think it's a relevant issue we should be talking about all the time, so we know what's out there and how to avoid it. Home inspector is not required to walk on or access a roof where to do so could result in damage to the roof or roofing material. Well, I can tell you that anytime you walk on a roof, there's a possibility of damaging the roof material, so you don't have to walk on any roofs. I haven't walked on a roof, and Jamie and I walked on roofs probably our first 4 years in the business, so that leaves 11 years. We haven't walked on a roof, and significantly nothing is different in terms of the results of our inspections, except one of the things that we do to avoid that is Jamie does go out of his way to go through the joists in the attics. Joe?
There's one time when we do walk roofs, I assume that
Oh,
you're probably
yes.
getting to that, right?
Well, I was going to when we covered flat roofs, but that's the only roof I know that we go on. And you don't even have to walk on, unfortunately, they're flat. If you get up on that flat roof and just pop your head up there and sit there at the parapet that is where the opening is, you can see everything right there. You don't even have to walk on it. But walking on the flat roofs is perfectly acceptable. But be careful, the older the building, those roofs can't get in and cave. So the next area here is components of a roof. Asphalt shingles, shakes, slate, clay tile, metal, rolled rubber roofs. That's a picture on the right-hand side of a rolled rubber roof. We'll talk about flat roofs in a minute. Well, let's talk about it now. Notice in the middle of that picture is a drain. Most of these rolled rubber roofs are either sloped or depressed into a drain, and then the water runs into that and runs out. So the biggest problem with flat roofs is when you happen to be doing an inspection on a flat roof, you're looking at the condition of that rolled rubber, and we'll talk about the condition of the rolled rubber in a second. But I'm looking at the condition of the rolled rubber, and I'm gonna look for where that drain line is, and I'm gonna see if it's clear. That's one of the reasons why I wanna walk across there. I wanna see what the debris is around that drain line, and I wanna see if it appears to be clear. They should have a little covering on it so the tennis ball doesn't get jammed down there, because what happens is if that water doesn't drain off of there, you get 1 inch of water and that sucker can cave in. I've seen apartment buildings that have been, that had no occupants, and the homeowner left, and 3 months later, he had no building because it had plugged up and we had a lot of rain and the ceiling just came in. I warn everybody that has a flat roof, if you're not doing periodic maintenance on that roof and getting up there twice a year to make sure that drain is clear and make sure that there's no problems and keep it all, take a look at it, you're just flirting with danger. Those rolled rubber roofs do last a while. You can get them last forever if you're willing to go up there and seal them with that kind of a tar base thing, and they sweep it on and they just cover up, and every year if you go up there and sweep on a little, it's like recovering a roof. You never have to replace that thing. On the next page, styles of roofs. Just not that important from a home inspection perspective which style you have. It's just, it's necessary for you to be able to identify them, that's all. The next page is roof construction. Do I care whether it's a truss system or a rafter system?
No.
When I'm looking at a rafters, anybody want to volunteer what I'd be looking at? Where's my eyes go first? What's the most important thing I'm looking for when I go into an attic and I'm looking at rafters?
If there's any cracks,
On what?
the rafters, beams.
Oh, that's not the first thing, but that's 2 or 3.
See if they're straight.
That's 2 or 3. The first thing I'm looking at is the main beam going down the middle and my rafters joined it. Have they pulled apart or started to twist? I'm looking for movement on those rafters. You have the main beam. That runs the full length. And then you have a rafter coming here, and you have a rafter coming here. If I have this, I have separation. Do you think he built it that way? This is flush. That's not flush. That should be like this. So the first thing I'm going to look at is, are those rafters look like they're in the original position on that main beam that's going ridge beam? Ridge, you know.
Ridge board.
Yeah. Ridge board? Close enough. So then, yeah, and so when I go into an attic, the first thing I'm looking for is any kind of twisting or any kind of separation here. And it could be pulling back, or it could be cracking. I could see stress cracks in here. Anything else I'd be looking at? I always look for fire, signs of the attic had a fire. You'd be surprised how many buildings in Troy have been on fire. You go up there and you see these rafters hard and everything, and downstairs it looks great. But I don't care whether it's a truss system or a rafter system. All I care about is the condition and the way that the rafters or trusses look. Are they moving? Is there any sign of moving or stress or cracking? Or
You look for termites up there?
Termites, I have heard of termites in attics, but I don't believe it to this day. Why would they go all the way to the attic in search of moist wood when they live in the ground? Everything we have here in New York State is subterranean. So they've got a nest 8 foot underground. Do you think they're going to go all and never hit wet wood? They're going to go all the way up into the attic to look for wet wood when they have a ground level where there's wood of logs, of all sorts of water on the edge. There's just no water in the attic typically. That certainly that would go up there. So as a in-con pest home inspector, I never go into an attic, and I probably someday will rue the day. I've been in thousands of houses I've done pest inspections for, and I've never once walked into an attic looking for pests. Carpenter bees and carpenter ants will sometimes wind up in your attic. But I'm gonna see signs of them also at grade level, because they live in the house down at grade where the water is. They don't live in the attics. Okay? Yeah, but we'll cover that on termite night.
Oh, boy, termite.
We have a termite night. For terminology, if you go to page 104, there's everything there is to know about a roof, but we're afraid to ask. Page 105 is performing a roof inspection. This is practically what you do during the inspection. How you go about it, which is basically just saying what I've already said here. Let's talk about the chimney on page 106. You can take that first sentence and just not worry about reading anything else. When inspecting a masonry chimney, look at the condition of the brick and the mortar. 99.5% of all chimney problems are because of the deterioration of the brick and mortar. The blowing out of the bricks, you get a ridge cap at the, you get a rain cap at the top of that chimney, and you get a crack in it, water filtrates down into it, and then that water trickles down into the bricks, and it starts blowing out those bricks because it gets water or moisture in it, and then it freezes and it'll blow it out and destroy the bricks. That's all caused by the rain cap or the deficiency of the rain cap at the top of the chimney. This thing here, did we find out, Joe, that this chimney diagram is wrong?
It is wrong, sir.
3 foot or 2 foot? Is that really accurate? 2 foot over a flat surface, 3 foot over the ridge beam?
It's actually 10 feet then from the inside or the outside corner to the top is 3 feet. And then it should be 2 feet over to the ridge.
Well, isn't that what that says?
No, but the diagram has it wrong. So everybody, if you see 2 feet minimum, cross that out, put a 2 feet. All right,
You mean on figure 4?
figure three.
Where's the 2 foot?
There isn't, it says 3 foot on the right.
Oh.
So you see 3 feet.
So,
minimum?
are you sure?
Yes,
2 foot over the ridge and 2 foot over the flat? I thought
No.
those were two different numbers.
no, it's 2 feet over the ridge and then
3 foot over the flat?
on 3 foot from the inside, so on your left-hand side, if you're on the left-hand side of the chimney, from where it's penetrating the roof to the top, it's 3 foot.
Wait a minute, that's what it says.
But that's not what the diagram has.
The diagram says, well, I'm interpreting this diagram as, see that roof there? If it's inside the 10-foot line, then it has to be 3 foot over the ridge, correct? If it's inside that line.
If it's within 10 feet,
It has to be 3 foot over the ridge.
has to be 3 foot over the ridge, correct?
And if it's outside of it, it doesn't matter where the hell it is. If I have something 15 foot outside my ridge, it can be underneath the ridge, correct?
No, it's gotta be 2 feet over the ridge.
It has to be 2 foot off of the deck. It still have, so you're saying by the one, because I've always been confused on this, so.
It's because you confused
3
me.
foot inside the 10 foot. It has to be 3 foot inside the 10 foot.
No, it's gotta be 2 foot inside the 10
You
foot.
just said 3 foot, I swear.
I know, because it's gotta be 2 foot within the 10 foot. It's gotta be 3 feet off the deck of the roof. That's why you have to have a 3 foot,
Where the roof hits the chimney,
where the roof hits a chimney, it's 3
So
foot
then
from
that-
that penetration to the top of the chimney.
so now it's greater than 2 foot.
Driving me crazy. And the reason we're spending the time on this is probably the most popular question ever asked at a quiz in the history of home inspection. I guarantee you, you will see this, and they will use a lot of different language to do this. Okay, Joe, you tell me when I'm wrong.
I'm looking it up right now.
10-foot mark. I'm under the impression if it's inside the 10 foot, this has to be 3 foot over this line. This distance right here has to be 3 foot if it's inside the 10-foot line.
That's not what he said.
That's not what he said. 2 foot?
2 foot from the ridge
If it's inside the 10-foot line, 2 foot from the ridge?
and 3 foot from where it hits the roof.
And if it's
Where it
outside,
should be.
if it's outside the 10-foot line,
It's 2 foot over the roof.
if this is 2 foot from here
Yeah.
to here, oh, 3 foot.
3 foot.
You're saying this is, Joe is saying this is 2, that's, in parentheses, is Joe's story. And,
That's 3.
and this is 3.
Show me, pass this up.
Is that correct?
Well, your book says if it's
I
outside.
know the
10
book's
foot-
wrong.
Okay.
The book's wrong.
Pass that up to him, not for you to, William, pass it up to Dan, please. Not for you.
Not for my eyes.
God, I hate these pads that keep.
Well,
2 foot over the ridge, if within 10 foot.
Mhm.
So it's
And then
2
if
foot
it's beyond 10 feet, it's gotta be 3 foot from the
from the
penetration.
penetration.
So is this legal? I'm asking you. This doesn't say what if it's below ridge. Is this, if this is 3 foot between this deck and this chimney,
That's correct, it's gotta be 10 feet away.
but let's say this is 15 because
Then it's
it's
gotta be 3 foot off.
from here.
That's correct.
So it's okay if if the chimney is
It's below,
underneath
under the ridge, 15
So
feet
it's
away.
2 and 3. So think about it, if you start here, 2 is closer to 0, and this is the 0 point. 2 within 10, 3 away from 10 off of the deck. And it doesn't matter past 10 away from the ridge.
Now, within that 10, you still have to be 3 off the deck as well. So let's say it's only 6 inches from,
I would imagine that that is true. It doesn't say, but it's not talking about deck, all it's talking about this. But I can't imagine it being 3 foot up here and not 2 foot from a lower deck. If, let's just say it penetrated here, a foot down. For it to be 3 foot here, it's gotta be 2 foot from there.
right, say it's only 6 inches down. You'd still need that 3 foot, so you need to be 2'6" over the bridge.
It makes sense, it doesn't say that though.
It's gotta be 2 feet higher than with any point within 10 feet.
Within 10 feet.
Within 10 feet.
But our question is, my question has always been, what about past 10 foot? I didn't think it mattered how high it was to the ridge.
No, it doesn't matter.
Okay. So the only thing this diagram is wrong is we have, well, you have 3 foot there.
No, but it was coming from the ridge. You see the line? Follow the
Yeah.
line.
No, I knew what you did there, and this looks right. It's just somebody else that doesn't know it can't interpret this properly. Because
So-
what you meant was that chimney, if it was within 10 foot, and yet the drawing shows it outside of the 10
Yeah.
foot. That's where the fault is.
Yep, so, it's fixed on the new one.
So now that and the roof drafting problem is obviously on page 107, this talks about the drafting problem, and that's what it's caused by. Now, all chimneys have rain caps, or should have rain caps, so water doesn't get down into the chimneys. And this is typically what we see. And around here, if you look at that top of that chimney, you're gonna look down in the flue, and this is going to be No, actually, that's the wrong drawing. You're going to have, let's say this is this wall here. You're gonna have a kind of a crown of cement around it so that when water hits this, it runs off. But really what it's doing, yeah, it runs off, and it's running off here. But really what it's doing is not letting you in the water inside this brick. Because once it gets into the interior of that brick, then it freezes and it'll start deteriorating the brick. And then it'll start breaking down the mortar in between, and then the chimney needs repointing. This is obviously the most common thing we see when we look at chimneys. Typically, all this deterioration starts at the top and it works its way down. So you have this chimney here, you go out there and the first thing, it looks great, and then a year later, the top 2 lines that needs repointing, and 5 years later now, the top 7 lines need reporting. It kind of works its way down.
So one thing you definitely want to get is definitely get a good camera so you can zoom in and take a look at that for those sections when you're visually observing.
A lot of houses have this attached on the exterior side of a house. So here's the house. And this is on the side. I call these shoulders. These are important points to look at. They will have got these bricks covered with a parge coat of concrete so water can't get into them. So you want to be sure to look at these bricks right in this area, because those parge coats, this parge coat always gets cracked and moisture penetrates into it. So I'm always looking at these, and I'm always looking at these top lines up here. And I'm looking for a rain cap. And you can't typically see the rain cap. You can see, this is a rain cap, but then you have this is actually a spark arrestor rain cap. Typically, the spark arrestor is called a rain cap or a spark arrestor, but this concrete that you see over the concrete here is also called a rain cap, keeping the rain out of the brick. If you see deterioration on, let's say we're down in the chimney, we're down looking at the fireplace. Here's your fireplace. Don't even know what to do with the fireplace. Okay, here's the fireplace. Here's the firebox inside. You're looking at the back wall of the fireplace. Notice a lot of water staining on one side. Guess what that's caused by? Can you see it? See all the staining over here, and this side of the firebox has no staining? This is water stains running down the inside of that firebox. When I do a fireplace inspection, I'm looking for equal amount of water staining or aging throughout the whole box. When I find it on one side, I typically can go out here and find a problem on this shoulder or on this side. So water will come down here and work its way down and work its way into the fire box. And it never, once you have uneven water stains in your firebox, that tells me there's water penetration coming from one place on the chimney. If it's even, that means, okay, maybe they didn't have a rain cap on it for a while and I was getting rain water. That's going to deteriorate the inside of that firebox evenly. Anytime I see an unevenness here, I know I have a chimney problem up above. Okay? Liner's cracked and water's getting in one side and not the other. If I have no water staining here and I have no differentiation between the staining and it all looks exactly even, then I don't particularly worry about if there's a problem here, unless it's all just bad.
This is supposed to have a ring cap?
Yes. Yes. Sometimes you can't see it though because of the height of the chimney and your footing. Maybe you can't, maybe you're on a house that has a downslope and you can't even see the stupid thing from the right angle to see it. You're looking for it, but that doesn't mean if you see it, you're gonna make a defect out of it. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Now, are you talking about a rain cap as this lid, or are you talking about the rain cap as the crown over the brick?
From going down the chimney.
Well, that's this. That's a spark arrestor / rain cap. That's what this is. stops it from going down the chimney, but there's also a ridge of concrete that goes around this brick.
Right.
That's also called a rain cap, or crown, sometimes they're
Crown.
called a crown.
But that spark arrestor is necessary, not necessary?
Oh, necessary.
It's supposed to be there.
Yeah, if it's not there, we're gonna recommend that they put one there.
Ah, right.
Water going down into the chimney is just not good from any perspective. Water's the enemy of the house.
Right.
And no matter where it shows up, other than your shower, it's bad. As
So
long as you
if-
shower daily, we're good with that.
If you can see a spark arrestor on the chimney, but yet you're still seeing those stains,
Okay, they could have put the spark arrestor up last
Yeah,
week
so
when it
you-
failed the previous inspection.
okay, but are you going to make that a defect?
What, the fact that they're staining in the chimney? Yes,
Yeah, okay, even though,
even the spark arrestor. There's probably another 5 good reasons why there could be water penetration into my fireplace
That's an
that has
evaluate.
nothing to do with this. No, this is not an evaluate, this is a repair. Does water belong in the firebox, yes or no?
no,
Then write it up.
but we can't determine.
We don't determine, we don't do that.
Okay.
I don't care what caused it. Excuse me, did I spit on it?
No.
Okay.
He'll
Well,
try
you were
harder.
watching.
We'll try harder next time.
Yeah, you'll notice next time.
Okay,
Do I care what caused it?
no, just.
William, don't think about cause, think about what you see. I see staining in a box that it doesn't belong in. I'm writing it up. Do I care why? No. Would it be nice if I could tell my client at least one version of the story, what may have caused it? And if I say, it may be the fact that, yeah, there's a rain cap there, but maybe that rain cap's new. I don't know. Doesn't matter. I look for defects and I tell them about the defects. Nowhere in the standards of practice does it say, tell your client what the defects are and why they're there. Don't care about the whys. And I'll probably be wrong, me, 80% of the time, somebody else 50% of the time, and nobody's right all the time. So why bother? Our job is to list defects, period, end of story. How we do that is how we sell our business. How we do that is how we impress people with our professionalism. How we do that is how they read our report and say, wow, it's simple, easy to understand. He didn't confuse me with his language.
Is this perhaps one of those things that you mentioned, that after the inspection's done, you're talking with the client, you say, well, you know, maybe this was what happened, so.
Exactly.
He's not gonna spend a bunch of bucks to have somebody check it out.
What he's talking about is we're only responsible for what we put in our written report, not what we say verbally. Okay? So you can be, if you have solutions, and if you have ideas, you can tell them that verbally as you walk them around the house and do your inspection. You can't put it in the report, then you're liable for what you say.
If it's a wood burning fireplace, would you recommend it be clean?
I'm always recommending it be clean, because I want another professional to come in and look at the interior of that lining.
So regardless of, you should be.
Well, I look at
recommending-
chimneys totally different than I look at any other thing in the building. Well, almost any other thing in the building. I look for a reason not to write it up. Everything else, I'm looking for a reason to write it up. Okay, it looks okay. I need to find a reason to put it on my list. I'm putting this freaking chimney on my list, the fireplace and the chimney on my list every time, unless I have a compelling reason not to. If I see any buildup of creosote at all, that could, doesn't have to, it could obscure my view of a crack. So what am I gonna do? I'm gonna write it up that it needs a professional chimney sweep. So that baby I'd better have a clean look all the way up the chimney if I poke my head inside, and I better not see a stitch of creosote. And I better not see, now if I don't see cracks and I have a clean look and it's got no creosote, then I don't have a reason to write it up. But there's not that many chimneys you can see all the way up. Just can't. Chimney questions?
Just one question on that, and I don't mean to be confused about this 2 foot, 3 foot. It's 3 foot over a flat roof that the chimney's gotta go up? It's 3
I
foot.
thought that was 2 foot, Joe.
Within 10 feet.
No,
On a
no, flat.
roof. On a
Oh, on a flat roof,
Yeah.
3 feet.
it's 3 feet.
Okay,
So-
and on a pitched roof, within less than 10 foot, it's 2 foot over the ridge,
Yes,
and outside of 10 feet, it doesn't matter?
correct. No, on the ridge, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter,
Off
correct.
of the deck is
Okay.
now 3 foot.
Okay.
I find it hard to believe that 12 foot away, it doesn't matter where I am in relationship to the ridge. I just find that hard to believe. You can't tell me that that chimney right here isn't gonna be affected by winds coming over and creating a reverse.
Now, that's a minimum, it's a minimum distance.
I know.
And actually, if you look at the next page.
Don't look at those drawings.
actually-
Joe did them.
Yeah, but on 340, you're seeing that the wind's coming over
Yeah.
over the ridge, and it's separating. So,
Well,
and you're getting actually 2 flows, one going up and away, and the other going down over the eave.
I don't believe drawings anyway. Somebody said, huh,
Makes sense to me, Joe.
William likes it.
See?
We're all good. Gutters. Let's talk about gutters. There's 2 types of gutters. There's aluminum and vinyl. When you see vinyl gutters on a house, what do you think?
What was the question again?
Vinyl gutters on a house.
Cracking cheaper quality?
Cheaper quality, why? Let's put it this way, if a professional gutter guy put it up, would he put up vinyl?
Probably
No, probably homeowner did it. Does that matter?
not. Not to me.
Why?
I just care if it works.
Not the way you would do it, right? But as long as it's working. Now, I argue with the industry. The industry seems to think, I don't argue, actually, we don't get into an argument, industries don't argue. But I disagree with one of the precepts that gutters have to be slowed down, tilted back to the drain line. Here's my gutter, and it's perfectly level. And here's a hole. Okay? Now, if this is perfectly level, who in this room would write it up as not being sloped towards the drain line? Nobody. Okay, well, the reason I wouldn't is because I still don't have a defect. I need to see some sign that it's not working. But if you think about it, the purpose of the slope towards the drain pipe is to get the water to run down there. Well, I defy a flat one to have a buildup of 3 inches of water and not go down there. So the minimum that could be built up there that doesn't go down because it's not sloped is probably 1/16 of an inch. And is a 1/16 of an inch pool on the bottom of a gutter going to affect anything negatively? So I'm not crazy about the whole thing, it has to be sloped towards the downspout. And you don't know how many times I go out there and I see a perfectly level, it certainly looks perfectly level, certainly can't determine whether it's slope, I don't care. What I don't want to see is a negative slope. And what happens on a negative slope is here's the corner of the house, I have overspill, and I have water stains going down the side of the house. Now I have a defect. Now I can write up the gutter. Now I can talk about the negative grade of the gutter away from the line. And the other issue I have, or the other thing I look for, here's the side of the house, here's the gutter, here's the grounds. I'm looking for a rain line in the ground. My gutter's here, and I'm standing there and I'm looking down the line of gutters, and in the ground is an indentation of where the water is coming out of that, spilling out of that gutter and into the ground. And I'm sure you're all used to seeing the side of a house that doesn't have gutters, and you see that rain line all the time. Well, when you have a gutter and you see a rain line, I'm going to write it up. Now, if there's a rain line and I have a gutter, That doesn't mean the gutter's filled, correct? That doesn't mean it's not operating. That rain line could have been from 5 years before, and they put the gutters up 4 years ago, and it hasn't gone over now. Why is that okay that I'm gonna write it up?
What was the question again?
Why is it okay that I'm not writing up a rain line in the ground that has gutters
Because it
going
might have
in?
been prior to the new installation.
That's right, but since there's a gutter there, is it fair to say it could possibly be the gutter?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it really was from 5 years before.
Maybe.
But that's the problem, maybe. Do I know for a fact that the gutter is clear? No, I do not. I don't care how new the gutter is. I don't know that the workman that installed it didn't shove a rag down there for whatever purpose, and now the stupid thing doesn't work. So if I see
Or stuffed with leaves.
or stuff with leaves from the very first day. So if I see a rain line and I see a gutter, I'm gonna call it a defect no matter what the situation. Do we understand why? I do not know for a fact whether it was before or after. I do not know for a fact that the gutter is working or not, correct? I know none of that is a fact. So it would be hard for somebody to argue with me that the gutter is for sure working right, and that was for sure from previous. Do we know those two facts? No, we don't. So I'm going to assume that I have a rain line and a gutter not working. And then they're going to have to prove that it's not. I did my job. I walked around the house and I found a system that may not be working properly. Didn't say it wasn't working properly. I said it may not be working properly. And that's all, as home inspectors, we need, the may. I have stain line from a furnace around the vent. Looks like carbon monoxide going on. The client said, the homeowner rushes in and says, yeah, that was caused 5 years ago when we had a problem here. Those stains were from that. I've had it fixed between them. Do I believe that? He may be lying, but it may be the truth. But until I have absolute certainty of whatever the situation is, I'm writing it up. Now, the heating and cooling guy can come running out there on a service call, spend $100, and find out that, yeah, it was fixed. This is working properly now. New heat exchanger, whatever. But that's not my job to determine what the reality is. My job is to look for those signs and to report on the signs. And do it as thoroughly and professionally as I can. Okay? Back to gutters. Extensions. Let's talk about gutter extensions. I love gutter extensions. I have the side of the house. I have the grade. I have the grade. I have a gutter coming down. Gutter coming down. What happens when water comes out of this and comes out and lands right here? What happens?
Back in the house.
Goes back in the house, correct. The grade drags it back in. And then it causes hydrostatic pressure on the concrete or stone or whatever it is. Hydrostatic buildup on the wall and starts infiltrating because all masonry products absorb moisture. And then it starts coming out as efflorescence is the first signs, correct? You with me so far? Okay, what does the home inspector manual say? What do professional people look at? Home inspectors say that the distance of these gutters should be. Seniors? Anybody?
Past the slope, past the inward slope.
No, they don't say that. I say that.
4 feet.
Doesn't matter. What if this is 6 foot out?
Positive drainage.
Well, the rule is 3 foot, just for the, so I have a 3 foot extension here, which is bullshit. What if I have a 6-foot grade? I need this to, whatever it takes, who said positive grading, to get into the positive grading, so the water doesn't go back in this direction. So if you ever see that on a quiz from the state or anybody else, and they say how far, what's your answer? 3 foot. What's reality? As far as necessary. Okay? As far as necessary to get it away so that it doesn't matriculate, I love that word, back into the house. Huh? God, there's just nothing else to talk about on gutters. I'm sorry. The biggest problem you're gonna have when you look at gutters is just make sure that they're working okay and properly. Look for your signs of staining, look for your rain lines. Chimneys, look for brick deterioration. Roofs, look for leaks. That would have made a great summary. I could have just said that for the summary of the chapter. That took 25 seconds.
That's about right. Since we can't see in the gutters, would it be standard to recommend they be cleaned?
No,
No.
you can't look inside anything, so why are you recommending everything to be done to that you can't look into? That's none of your business. If you have signs that they're not, they may not be clean and that is causing a problem, then you can do that.
If you see like a little plant growing out of it,
Now you know it's plugged. And now you know it may not be working properly. When you walk out and you see gutters with green stuff growing out, write it up. But what you were saying is have them clean it anyway. No sign, no reason. You do your job. Okay? Any questions about this chapter?
what about like just basic brackets, like gutter brackets, gutter, like old looking, nothing, you know, don't worry about that.
Don't care.
Just as long as it's working.
I always look at the gutter, I look at anything in the house that had a workman put it on. And that workman looked at that, and sure enough, there's this gap. This 1-inch gap between joints. And let's just say it was joined together, maybe at the extension. Did a workman turn around and say, ah, good job, and walk away? If there was a problem there, was it something that was the way it was installed? Meaning, can he look at that and say, oh, I did a good job? No, he can't, because it's not joined together properly. I'm writing it up. So if a workman had done it the way it should be done, and it looks like it's done, then there's not a problem.
Right, working.
Right. But I look at where, no matter what it is, if a workman had just got done building the handrail on the stairs, and I walk up there and I shake it and it's loose, would a workman would that contractor that installed that walk away from that? A professional walk away? No, he would have done something about it. So when I look at a house, I look at it as if, where is the thing that a workman would say, oh, I gotta get that fixed. Gotta get the handrail, the stairs, have you ever walked downstairs that were pitched forward and you thought you were gonna fall forward? Would a workman finish that and say, oh, good job, David? Well, it's not much of a pitch. Doesn't take much. So I always look at the job from the fact of when the guy was done fixing it, building it, or doing something with it. Did he walk away proud of his job or not so much? If it's not so much, I'm writing it up. Does that make sense?
Makes sense, yeah.
So,
Old stuff, or like, let's say.
old stuff.
It's just old.
If
it.
it looks rusty and deteriorated and it's only 1 year old, then I'm gonna write it up. But if it looks rusty and deteriorated and it's 20-year-old, then it looks like it's age.
Right.
So it looks like it's age and it's working. I have a hard problem writing that up. It's working. We're not here to, the New York State law has a thing about property. New York State sales is an as-is state. A lot of people think, well, as-is means that it's okay if there's anything bad. That's not true. New York State looks at the value of the house and says some of the systems in the house are brand new, probably. and some of the systems are aging. We're not charging you extra for the new, so we're not going to knock off money for old. Yes, for deteriorated, or yes, for that needs repair. But age isn't the element in the equation of looking at a house. Brand new doesn't get you any extra money. You put a brand new furnace in and you sell it next week, that doesn't get you any money. You got a working heating system. You got a 100-year-old boiler with one of those open flames in the middle of it, it's still got heat. And and it's still working, and it'll probably work another 100 years. They're not gonna give you less of a price for the house. No matter what the age of a system, if it's working, the state says no mas. Now, some states do adjust for a new system and say, well, it's not a new system, so therefore, so they will try and balance it. But New York State says, no, as it is. So because they figure it'll average out in the end. You may have a brand new roof, but you got the old boiler, or vice versa, so they don't care. Age isn't a factor for as far as New York State's concerned. Okay? Let's take a 10-minute break, then we'll move on to exterior walls.